From retro to next gen, we've got it all. I'm George, a Gen X grown-up, and this is Bit by Bit. All right, here's a historical bit from TimeExtension.com about a 1996 handheld console called the Paso Go from Koei. Now, I read this article, which is a very short article. It gives you some details, a little bit about comparisons for what was available in the day, like the Game Boy Pocket, which cost around about $43 in Japan at the time, compared to this, which was around $250 at the same time. Of course, the screen is massive compared to the Game Boy Pocket, but what's more interesting than the article is the YouTube video that this is linked from. So this YouTube video is actually about 25 minutes long. The gentleman who created it is very knowledgeable, and he goes through not just the history of the console and a little bit about it, the different cartridges that are released for it. There was only like 11 of them, I believe, if I remember right, but also a fix video. So you get to see him repair the thing and bring it back to life. It's a really interesting read, an even more interesting video. So head over to TimeExtension.com and check it out. Okay, here's an unexpected bit from CBR.com, and by unexpected, I mean, I misread the title of the article. So when I originally read it, I thought it said 10 best pinball games of all time. I was like, ooh, I can't wait to see. Are you going to talk about Black Knight? Or are we going to talk about some of the modern Stern stuff or the older 70s stuff from Williams? What are we going to talk about? Then I looked at the rankings and I'm like, wait a minute, these aren't pinball machines. No, it's 10 best pinball video games of all time. And they are ranked, which you guys know is a pet peeve of mine. So let's go down the list. At number 10, they've got video pinball on the Atari 2600. Yeah, that's exactly what it looked like. I'm going to show you what it looked like on the cover. Nothing like what you got here on the game. But of course, it's all we had back then when it came to video versions of pinball, virtual versions of pinball. So it was awesome. We loved it. Some of these others I don't recognize. Here's an early Mario pinball game. It looks kind of neat. You see the Nintendo logo. The color scheme is fun. It's definitely got flippers in the channel and the little drops and everything. It's okay. Microsoft Pinball Arcade. Yeah, it's okay. I'm not going to say it's great. This was on Windows and Game Boy Color. It's got some good stuff in it. Kirby's Pinball Land I never played, so I'm not going to speak to that being on the list at all. Mario Pinball Land I absolutely did not play either, so can't speak to that. Sonic Spinball. This one I played a little bit, I think I remember, because I remembered this screen right here. I don't remember if it was fun or not. 3D Ultra Pinball Creep Night is a horrific thrill. I would argue that Pinball M should be on this list if you're going to put a horror-themed virtual pinball system in there. Full Tilt. Now, this is the one that we all are probably most familiar with. This is the one that had Space Cadet in it, Skullduggery, a whole bunch of other stuff in there. So this was a really good one. It was on Windows. You guys know it was almost pre-packaged with Windows from like 95 on or something like that. But I realized we're at number 2 already. No mention of Pinball FX, no mention of VPX, no mention of Pinball M. I would know Pinball FX3, nothing. The number 1 is this Pinball Arcade Ultimate Pinball video game. I wholeheartedly disagree with this list. I don't know how you're going to do a list of pinball video games, including virtual platforms, and not throw the Pinball FX stuff in there. Anyway, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about these games, or maybe go checking them out through emulation or something like that, head over to CBR.com, check out the article. All right, here's a retro game bit over on Forbes.com, of all places. Apparently, there's going to be a new game coming over to the Nintendo Game Boy called Metal Miracle. Got some graphics here that make it look really cool. The author talks about how he really hasn't covered Game Boy Color releases for 20 years. No surprise there. The system's been pretty much dead during that time, except for just retro collecting and playing. But he discovered over on itch.io that there's a big community of people still developing for that platform, and a group has developed this Metal Miracle system, or game rather, which features 2 characters kind of in a Contra or Broforce feel. One of them, named Fox, is a ninja guitarist. Another one, Ace, is a mutant punk. And he goes on to show us a picture here of Fox's jumping animation, which is awesome. Mutant, a guitarist ninja with the little horns and everything. That's freaking awesome. I love that. Of course, this is not an officially licensed Nintendo Game Boy Color game or anything like that, but the team behind it does plan to ship on a traditional Game Boy cartridge later on in the year. Now, they're prepping a Kickstarter campaign, so keep an eye out on Kickstarter for that when it does drop in release if you're interested in this game. The article goes on to give a little bit more detail about the Game Boy Color grouping and stuff over at itch.io.com. The people who are developing, there's a whole bunch of sites that he links in this. So this is a really well-researched article. It's a pretty quick read, maybe 5-10 minutes or so, but it's got a lot of good information. And if you love Game Boy Color, this just might be a game for you. And here's a neat little bit from xda-developers.com. There is now an N64 cartridge that allows you to play games loaded off flash storage like the article title says here, but it's completely open source, which is different and unique. Now, we know that the N64 has its problems with emulation because of how complicated the system was and how Nintendo allowed game developers to use microcode in all of their games to do specific things, take advantage of the hardware, and that microcode is very difficult to replicate in emulation, which is why the Nintendo 64 emulation isn't quite as good as some of even the following consoles after it, like the Wii or the Wii U. But this article is really neat because it goes into some details about the anti-piracy measures that kind of necessitate this whole world of these flash cartridges that are out there. So there's two chips, the CIC and the PIF, that communicate back and forth to each other. One is on the motherboard of the Nintendo 64, the other one's on the cartridge, and they just work back and forth to validate that the cartridge is real and is a authentic, good Nintendo cartridge, and that's how you get the ability to play the game on your N64. But this new open source one called the Summer Kart 64 has been created by a Polish hardware guy named, and I'm going to mess this up, Madzus Faderwaskand, I don't know, and a whole bunch of other people behind it, but they've made this completely open source. Now, there's a link in the article here that gives you some places to buy it, including like buying it completely already manufactured. I went and looked it up. It's like $95, which, if you want to play a bunch of Nintendo stuff on the original hardware, considering that this one allows you to connect via USB-C to your PC for the cartridge and do some things with the console itself, as well as loading your games onto the flash and whatnot. I mean, $95 doesn't seem unreasonable to me. The rest of the article goes into those difficulties with emulation, talks about Project 64, which we've all known and talked about before. And they're saying, is this a good choice, a good thing to do? Personally, I think it is. These games are getting harder and harder to find. They're getting more and more expensive in the wild, and you might as well find a way to emulate them as best you can in a simple flash cart that loads all of your games into your physical Nintendo 64 device. Well, that seems like a no-brainer of a way to go. All right, here's another Atari bit from our friends over at TimeExtension.com. There's a company that's going to be releasing the Atari Jaguar Mario Kart clone, Atari Karts, in a reprint edition. So this company is called Songbird Productions, and they're going to release that and a couple of other Jaguar games, which is really cool. I never had a Jaguar, but I kind of always wanted one. I've looked on eBay recently. Boy, those things are expensive, anywhere from like $250 up to $1,100, depending upon which auction you're looking at. But Atari Karts was apparently originally developed in 1995 by a company called Miracle Designs, and it's got basically the exact same gameplay as Mario Kart, but instead it's Atari characters, including Bentley Bear from Crystal Castles. Man, that takes me back. I'd really love to play a game with Bentley Bear driving around on a course. That'd be fun, I think. Anyway, this was also part of the Atari 50 celebration that Digital Eclipse came out with a couple of years ago, which we all know and love, and has gotten lots of updates since then. But Songbird Productions is going to re-release these things. There's a couple of other ones, Wormhole 2000 and Spidey X, which are homebrew games. I went and took a look at their website. These things are not going to be cheap. They're going to be like, I think I saw $80 or $90 for the Atari Cart. So, you know, if you're a big Jaguar fan, it may be worth it. That's going to do it for the news making headlines in the gaming world right now. I am George, and if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button, and I'll keep on bringing you the news bit by bit.